Oh, hi, and welcome. I am Chaz Evans, the Director of Exhibitions for VGA Gallery, and your host for today's episode of VGA Fireside. Thank you for joining us. I have a few credits, announcements, greetings, and such before we get started. First, let me thank producer and Director of Operations for VGA Gallery, Bryce Pulls, who will be with us in the form of disembodied text for the duration of today's episode. I want to thank Director of Communications and Designer Eleanor Schichtel for all of our graphics and animations for this program and other great graphics for VGA. We want to thank the VGA staff and the VGA board. We want to thank the Independent Game Designers Association Chicago. Thank you very much, Ross, for helping us spread the word about this show. I want to thank some groups that are with us tonight. I want to thank the Media Arts and Game Design Module students of the Radio, TV, Film Department in the School of Communication at Northwestern University. I know that's a big mouthful because we have a cascading series to get to that group of students, but I'm very glad you're here, and thank you to Osuke and Lori for helping spread the word. I want to thank the DePaul game development students. Welcome here to VGA Fireside, and thanks very much to Caleb for helping spread the word. I want to thank Electric Mirrors, who are responsible for that groovy intro music you were just enjoying. I know I was enjoying it. And I want to thank the Oldham Music Center Youth Brass Band for the fanfare that you're about to hear. And if you know any organization or group that would be interested in this kind of program where we discuss important and significant items with artists who make games, please reach out to us at info@vgagallery.org. We want to hear from you, and we want to make sure this show is brought to the people that are interested in this sort of thing. So I think that's all of my thank yous, greetings, and preamble. So before we waste any more time, super producer Bryce, can you please hit us with that opening fanfare animation? Yes! The fanfare has been played, which means that VGA Fireside has officially come to session, and it's now my honor to introduce today's special guest, Catt Small. Catt Small is a designer and video game developer who has been coding since she was 10 years old. When she's not designing UX and speaking publicly about her work in tech, she makes games to help people better understand the world around them. Her work has been shown at Indiecade in Los Angeles, Fantastic Arcade in Austin, and the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. Everyone at home, please help me welcome Catt Small to VGA Fireside.
Hi, it's great to be here. Hello, folks on the internet.
Hello.
Thanks for having me.
The folks on the internet welcome you with open internet arms. Catt, thank you so much for joining us. How is it going?
I would say pretty solid. I can't complain. It's kind of warm in my apartment, but you know, I'm living. I'm having a good time pretty much. I have my cute cat sitting below my desk, which brings me joy at all times.
That's an important companionship and support, having the cat there. And if it's too warm in your apartment, it's too cold in my unfinished basement. So we somehow even things out.
Yes.
So there are people who make games who are tuning in tonight. There are people who want to get started making games tonight. So I always like to start the conversation out by just asking about the story about how our guest got into the field in the first place. So please tell us, how did you get involved in video game making?
That is a great question. I did also want to say that, yes, that is a DDR, Matt. Yes, I got involved in video game creation. I think, so when I was younger, the first things that I programmed were dress-up dolls, and that was like kind of an intro. It was the only thing I could really figure out how to code at the time. This was like 2000, 2001, and there weren't a lot of game development tools that were super accessible at that point. So yeah, dress up dolls were the best thing I could do for a while. And then when I was in college, I started to actually volunteer to make art for games because my friends were mostly programmers at that point in time. They didn't really know how to do game art or like UX or anything like that. So I was able to start lending my hands to that. And then over time, I started to learn from them like, oh, this is how you make a game. And it's actually not as hard as I thought. At that point, there were tools that were more like drag and drop. And even though I knew how to program in terms of like HTML, JavaScript at that point, I didn't really understand things like 3D or how to make Unity work, for example. So it was a really high learning curve at that point, and something like Construct was a lot more accessible to my brain at that point in time. So yeah, I really just started collaborating with those folks that I met through and it was mostly the NYU IDM program. And then because they were in the same building as the folks who were on the game center at a certain point, I felt like I started to really absorb that culture of like just jamming on games with folks. So that was really great. I'm super thankful, especially to people like Arthur Ward Jr., who was somebody who I collabed with a lot. We had this studio that was called Quantum Box, where it was just like, you never know what you're going to get. That was the joke. And we had like random jams with each other where we would just like make like games that if you clicked on the logo on the website, you would be able to actually like play those games that we came up with. So it was a really fun time being like a, later in college student, just like volunteering my art skills and getting in return the skills to learn how to make games. And then, yeah, over time, just kept working on that, kept going to global game jams. And I also, at some point, met like Phoenix Perry, for example, again, through NYU, and started working with Code Liberation, where I was teaching other people to make games as I was also learning how to actually build up my skills more. Yeah.
Terrific. So some of the games you were making were sort of hidden in an Easter egg on the logo of the website. So
yeah.
Like they're fully accessible, but you just like find it on your own.
Yeah, definitely fun times. I remember staying up until like midnight just working. I think we made a game where it was essentially that you were like a ghost cat for some reason, and you were in a museum and there were just pictures falling all around you, and you had to like put them up on the wall and like kind of catch them. It was super weird, but like, I had fun illustrating that, and I don't know why we made it, but it was pretty cool. Yeah.
Well, it's not because it was of the moment, and it was
important
to that community at that time. And this sounds like this is a huge factor in getting you more and more in the field, is having that stable of collaborators, a community around you that's like, let's just keep on doing things.
100%.
And then also the presence of some softwares that are a little more fun for warming up with, that are the learning curve is so steep. You mentioned Construct. Just for those who are interested in finding a simple tool for getting started, are there any other recs you have like Construct, or is that still an option?
Yeah, Construct is now on its third version, so I definitely recommend that. I am trying to remember some of the other ones that were really popular at that point in time. I would say Game Maker is another great tool that I know some really talented folks have used and just like pushed to the limit. And I think that I'm going to experiment a little bit with that one next, because you can actually, I think with both Construct and Game Maker, you're able to like export it to like not just like desktop applications, but also to consoles. So I'm a really big fan of tools that let you start with drag and drop, but then you can start to program. Later, I ended up using Phaser, which is an HTML and JavaScript programming like framework for game development. So I also really do like Phaser still because it's very comfortable to me, but I think that it's harder to say turn that into a desktop application, for example. So there are some drawbacks, but I think it's really great for people who are coming from web development and want to get into game dev.
Yeah, it is always nice if it's not the walled garden kind of platform where the data is portable and you can sort of have it and move it around outside of that environment. So you got a community, you're making games left and right, you're putting them in interesting contexts. Here's a follow-up question I have, which is what kinds of non-game media might be interesting to you or influencing you at this moment? Is it all just a complete immersion in games?
Yeah, I'm definitely influenced by a variety of types of media. So sometimes film. One of the projects that I'm thinking through still requires a lot of storytelling. And so I'm doing a lot of research around like what makes people want to look into their family history, for example. And I think that's like reading, like just reading like why people did that, and like reading blogs and watching TV shows are all great ways to understand that, because there are so many shows that are just very relevant to that exact thing that I'm like starting to dive into. I think that definitely also for me as a designer, like I do user experience design by day. So I think it's also super important to look at different applications and the way that they work. And I find that really valuable for thinking about how to best communicate my points. Yeah, I feel like that's where my head is at right now, just like consuming a lot of like shows that feel relevant to the work that I'm trying to do. Of course, definitely also playing a lot of games that feel like they are in similar veins is something that I do as well. And then, yeah, just like really trying to read as much as I can on the subject that I'm studying.
So yeah, so it's a multimedia set of influences. I really like hearing that you are comparing the feel of interaction in pieces of software that don't culturally present as games, but still having that influence of the way interactions would occur in the game projects you're making. Were there any particular titles that you feel like were influential to you getting into the field, or right now that they're sort of like touchstones that are not games?
Gosh, that is a really, really interesting question.
This one you can pass if you feel
Woof. I mean, I think it really depends on the game. Like, I think for Sweetheart, it was mostly definitely gaming influences. For the project that I'm working on right now, I think it's mostly because I'm trying to scale up a little bit and not tell like a vignette of a story, or to just make an autobiographical type of game. I think that's why I need to do a lot more external study. But I felt like with some of the earlier, or a lot of my earlier games, like one of them is just about, keeping two friends that have, or two exes who have broken up from coming back together. And that's like such a universal story. I feel like that I didn't really have to research it. Another game I made was also about breakups, but it was like the 5 stages of grieving your like old relationship. And that also feels pretty universal. There's another game I made that was like a competitive cat petting game. Like these are all very small, ideas, but for this one, I definitely have I literally have a Google Doc where I'm just compiling references to like different TV shows and like different like posts that I'm reading from people, so that I can understand like how would I go about building this world that is not the one that is mine.
Well, I'm glad that brings us to several of your projects, and we want to always see the games played live with the added advantage of hearing the thoughts of the person who made it in real time. So would you mind giving us a demo of Sweetheart, one of your most recent projects?
Let's do it. Okay, so I am gonna share my screen. I'm like setting up this, like, how do I do this full screen? This is always fun. Okay, I think I got it. Yeah, great. Woo, here we are. It's my wonderful game. Oh, is there, I feel like there was probably an option for me to share audio. I'm just gonna make sure I actually clicked that. Thank you for your patience, folks. Window, where is the option? Chrome tab? Oh, Chrome tab. Okay,
Take your
I think I got it.
Okay, I was gonna say Bryce could do amusing graphics. Looks like we got it.
Yes. Okay, cool. So it's been a while since I've played this game, so it's going to be really fun and nostalgic. But yeah, I worked on this game for 5 years in total, and it started as a student project and then turned into something that was a lot bigger for me. And a lot of it involved like just putting it down and then getting a bunch of feedback from people and then picking it up again and starting to build it more. So I'm really proud that I was able to finish this game. All right, asleep. Kara is asleep. You are asleep. You are Kara. So this is mostly just like setting the player up to, know what to do, which is that a week is about to begin, and you need to decide if it's going to be a good one. Good morning. This is my old phone.
With a swipe, we begin.
Yes, with a swipe we begin. I'm so proud of like the music. So I had a couple of people help me with this music. One person was Fu Nguyen. So he did a lot of the music for this game. I also had a couple of other folks who helped as well. So thanks to those folks. Yeah, this is a representation of my real cat. He used to be a lot younger at this point. Now he's 18. And so, yeah, it's really great to just kind of look back to that point in time when he was a little baby. It's not his actual name. His name is not Kitty, but it's what I got used to calling him, which is a very real thing for me. I nickname my cat every 6 months or so. So yeah, I used to get up at 6:45 a.m. in order to go to work and to school. It was not fun. But yeah, I would pull myself out of bed. I would take my morning vitamin, and then I would feed my cat. Then I would get into a shower. And as you can see, I would be pretty happy in the morning. It was always nice to take a shower. I still do this. This is the tiles from my shower at that point in time. So I really tried to replicate my life at that point. Welcome to me in underwear. So this is the point where you start to think about what you're going to wear to school. There's a timer in the corner, so you have to do this at a reasonable pace. Very much like real life. Let's see. Yeah, that's cute. Shoes. That's a cool outfit.
Dope.
I loved figuring out how to rate clothing and like how to make clothing combinations and hair combinations and shoe combinations together, create a rating system that felt realistic. So this is kind of all a reference to my dress up doll experience when I was younger. It was really fun to rebuild that. And yeah, we got some voice in there, which was fun as well.
So the game was evaluating your outfit selection choices.
Exactly. All right, so now you get to walk to school. Oh, I gotta hurry up. Oh, thank God. This guy didn't say anything to me. He could have. All right, so the train comes right on time. I feel relieved about getting to school without being late. It's really easy to grab a seat. The sleepiness from waking up so early sets in. I love the song. After an hour, the train reaches my stop. Now this is vibing. We're vibing now. I grab my bag, I get off the train. On the way to school, I stop at a local street stand. Full of energy, only 35 cents. Yeah, I used to buy bananas for 35 cents from the grocer. It was super cheap. And then I get to school. I really enjoyed the music this person made, yeah. Yeah, so I went to the School of Visual Arts. I had fun figuring out some of the alternate phrasing for this. So yeah, SFGA, let's go with that. Yeah, one of the classes I used to take at this point in time was a class where you would just draw naked people. So it was just us, the like 19 to 23-year-old people, you know, just in a class, kind of just drawing naked people of various sizes. And honestly, it was kind of cool to just like see bodies and just get used to people in that way. So yeah, it's really a lot of like talking. So you get to talk to different people. I'm going to talk to Angelica. And so you have conversations with people like this one. And if you talk to them a couple of times, then you actually get to know them more deeply. So in this case, yeah, people are really immature. They used to be very judgy about some of the larger models, and it was really uncomfortable. I remember feeling that. So I wanted to add that in here as well, just to reflect on that time. Yeah, and so this is a moment of bonding for the two of you. And then you pretty much just, yeah, go through the week. So this is like the nighttime. There's like a daytime commute and a nighttime commute, very much like anyone living in a city knows about. I was a very big like anime nerd at this point, and I was learning how to speak Japanese. And so I'm reflecting on that awkward stage of my life.
there's a sort of a lateness gauge for the morning commute. Is that also the case in the post-class commute?
No, for this part it's fine if you're late getting home usually. Thank you for not talking to me 2 times in a row. So there's only a lateness gauge in the morning. It's more important for you to be on time to class or to work than to actually come home on time. And then, you get to talk to your mom and talk about how your day was. If your day was not actually great, then you would have the option to say it was great or to say it was, not great, and be honest with her. So it's really fun to get to see how having a happy gauge, this is such a good day, how that affects the conversations that you have with your mom. And then you can do things like help her make dinner. I'm not going to help. I'm going to be rude.
How dare you?
I was sometimes just a sassy teen or a post-teen. So that's basically the game. There's like a couple of other parts of it where you can, that was nice. Where you can it teaches you how to code, for example, which is really fun. So on the second day, and I think the third day, you get to go to work and experience interacting with coworkers as an intern. I feel like this is a good demo. Do you want me to play more, or should I wrap it up? What do you think?
You can keep it going, and I could try to ask a couple questions.
Sounds good.
Well, we're dealing with the visual novel genre and format.
Yes.
What did that set of conventions that existed, as a tradition in the video game world? What about that set of conventions helped you, or was the right set of resources as far as interactivity is concerned? And what do you think this game is saying in conversation with other visual novels?
That's a great question. I definitely wanted to think of ways to have a visual novel, but to also think about I think there's a lot of criticism of visual novels, which I understand because they are very often about interacting with characters in the game. And so I wanted to think about ways to play on that, but then to also think about how to give the characters or the players more agency over the character's life in terms of what are ways that we can actually provide more interaction for folks that isn't just doing this. And so that's why at first it really was just the dress up part. And then eventually I started to add in some of the other activities. And that's where it really started to feel like a better balance, where I wasn't just having people read things for 20, 30 minutes in a row. So the inspiration for that was actually, I don't remember the name of this game. It was a Japanese visual novel. It was for the Nintendo DS. That's why I'm struggling because it's so old now and I have to go find it and list it out probably on Twitter. But they had this this part where you could cook and you could make chocolate for this person that you had a crush on. And I really liked that and kept thinking about how do I put that in my game? Because I felt like that was an example of just being able to actually, have an interaction that feels like you're really there. And I love that about a lot of games, that you really feel like you're present within the game itself. I don't want to overdo it because it's not really possible to be 100% in game, although I guess VR, right? But I really wanted to think about how can I, have these moments where I really feel like I'm working again. Oh, dang it. The shorts, the shorts are too sexy. Alas. Yeah. Guys are probably going to hit on me in this game now.
It has an effect.
Regrets. Leave me alone. That's rude. Yeah, this has happened to me before. People are really rude sometimes. Yeah, so this is where the game gets pretty real with a capital R. But you got to dress up and choose your clothes. Oh, I'm going to work. Oh, no. I forgot about this.
We need to, just see the different results. The first sort of day you showed us is pretty smooth, so we need to see how conflict arises as well.
Now we're going with a full train wreck day. Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah. So your boss is in this game is kind of a bit, what is the word, paternal. And so, yeah, he's really judgy about things like your shorts are too short. Just, try not to be too distracting. And then this is where you actually get to do something. And this was really fun figuring out like, what does it mean to create a design? And then how do I make it graded in a way that like feels pretty accurate? This is a chat box. But so what I did is I had like these little comments that you can like read as you're going through. And I love seeing people put this all together. Like people usually ignore these kinds of things. Oh, that probably means it should be in the bottom and maybe on the right side, at least if you're in a Western, country. This thing, a large image might be useful for getting people interested. People like pictures a lot. People like pictures a lot. Like this is, like the client thinks this is probably pretty important. So like, where does it go, And so I just started nudging people. And I think the way that I coded this was like, it's a grid. So I was able to figure out like, I think it was an array essentially, like where do they put this on the grid? And like, based on where they put it and where I think it should have gone, then like, that's how it actually grades you in the end. Fingers crossed that I did this okay. Somewhat useful, feels like it's probably the right place to put this. So yeah, it was really interesting to figure out how to make this just like a design. It doesn't look that great, but I feel like we'll see what happens. Yeah.
Agreed. So it's another great mini game and an example like the clothing picking scene where we have a moment to create some contrast from the text box interactions. But then also like they each of their own opportunities to have a conversation about something else. And here we have software talking about software, which is interesting on its own, but also a part of the lived experience that the whole game is about. So it's coming from that biographical perspective as well.
Exactly. And then the fun is, once you do this work of the work in the game, you then have to, go interact with people. And I feel like watching people do this is the most fun part. So I'm just going to go with somebody who like is really mean. If you could not tell by his shirt, which I have to remember what it says.
Bobby with the sarcasm shirt is the mean character?
What? Yeah, Bobby is like, I think a lot of us know Bobbies, for those of us who work in tech and or in games full time. Like there's always a Bobby who's like, ugh, I'm coding. My level of sarcasm increases with your level of stupidity. Like, yeah, so Bobbies are great. And it was really fun to just like put all of this. Yeah, I know. Bobby's shirt. Yeah, Bobby just kind of like, my time is more important than yours. And he's, honest, but in a way that's just hurtful, which is, a real thing. But, she's already having a terrible day, so it's not going to get any better for her.
Not the right time, Bobby.
Not the right time, Bobby, but Bobby has no emotional awareness. And you basically just cry. I've definitely had days like this where I was a newbie and like people just didn't know how to work with me to, nudge me toward a place of betterness. So it was really interesting to reflect on that. And then this was also fun is like putting in some things about my friends. And what should I do? I guess I should hang out. Yeah, I can use a pick me up. So yeah, I referenced some DDR things. Speaking of my DDR mat, which was also very fun. Yeah.
Do I sense another mini game coming? Perhaps.
I really wanted to make one here, but I just I did not have the energy. Honestly, I was just like, if I remake DDR in here, will I get sued?
You just wanted to make a gesture towards it as an important part of the autobiography that you're explaining. You're like, if you want to play DDR, just go play DDR.
Pretty much. Yeah. Let's just, I wanted to definitely eventually, maybe I'll come back and add that in. But I had no mental energy at the time to figure out what would a, game that's not literally just DDR look like. So I put that on the backlog. Yes. Along with petting the cat. A lot of people wanted me to add a way to pet the cat. I did not. I'll get all the dance.
You want to pet pets in the games.
Right. Everybody wants to pet pets. So I loved that people were even in this tiny little game, can we pet the cat? Oh yeah. So this was interesting to explore, like some of the interactions between me and my friends at this point in time. Like, I don't want to play a slow song. Maybe somebody else wants to play. Oh, fine, I'll play. Yeah. I used to be kind of a little bit of a baby. But the benefit of playing an easy song is that you look cool. So it would have been really fun to think about this and like explore what a rhythm game would have looked like. And I really do like the idea of coming back to that at some point.
Yeah, there's also such a thing as feature creep, right? So
right.
You think of makes sense. So
and that's what I did. Yeah.
So you have we have the story, which is primarily brought to us through text, and illustrations, simple animations. We have mini games that are bespoke to real lived experience. And I guess that the autobiographical quality is a statement of its own, I think, in the visual novel genre, when the genre can become so calcified in a way with what kind of subject matter you expect it to take on, which is typically, right, just what 10 people are you going to try to date at school,
right?
And this really opens up the field, right? We can draw on our own experiences and create a very interesting and self-expressive thing that for you to understand. Hopefully there's something universal and shareable that comes from the specific and personal, etc.
Right. Yeah. And that's what I really enjoyed. Like, you don't date anybody in this game. Like, you do sometimes hit on people or like give somebody your phone number if you want to, but there's no dating that actually happens, which I really thought was, interesting to explore, because I know in most games that are graphic novels, like the point is to build those kinds of relationships. And I really appreciated the ability to just, do more of a reflection at on a very awkward time in my life where I was figuring out, like, how do I socialize with people? How do I exist within like different types of spaces? Like, really diverse part of the Bronx, going to like, a school that's not super diverse, going to an office that isn't super diverse. And just like reflecting on all of that was really valuable. And I've really appreciated a lot of the comments that people have also given me about how it's either helped them understand a bit more about what it's like to be a person like me, or they felt seen as well, which I really appreciate.
So if, in addition to those who have chimed in on what they were interested in while we were playing, if you have any questions about Sweetheart, please feel free to type them on in, whether you're on Twitch or YouTube, and we'll try to handle them. But I also, that's just Bryce asking for questions. I was going to switch gears a little bit and say, Catt, you're a maker of games who wears many hats. And in addition to making your own projects independently, you're also involved in making a platform for others to have their games seen and featured and talked about. So can you tell us about the Game Devs of Color Expo?
Yes. I am so happy about what we're doing. So just as I want to give, like a visual representation, if I can, really quickly. Last year was a cool year for us. It was something that we didn't exactly expect. To have to go online or anything like that. But we were able to make it work, and it worked really well. So for those of y'all out there who do not know what the Game Devs of Color Expo is, it is an annual event that has been running since like 2016 or 2015 or so. I think we did the first one in 2016. And it is really, it's a space for game creators of color to celebrate each other, but then we also, of course, invite anybody to celebrate these folks. It really came out of a need that I and a couple of other friends saw, because we were at the time having a hard time, like really, I felt like finding collaborators who wanted to support the kinds of games that we were creating. And so I was like, screw it, we'll just make our own space. Like if y'all aren't really interested in the work that we're doing, then we can just be the people to cultivate that community. And I think we started the first year with a couple of hundred people. And then the next year we were at like 400. And then the next year we had even more. In 2019, we had like 750 people or so. And last year we had like 1,500, and it was online. And so previously we'd been doing all in-person events, but we switched to online, and people like loved it and were like totally vibing, and like we had a lot of fun just like, you know, having some great conversations. So I'm really proud of the work that we've been able to do. We're coming back again this September, and like, yeah, we're going to keep it online for now because I think that eventually we'll probably explore more of a hybrid format, but we want to be safe essentially and create a space of comfort. And we really do also like that the online version is very inclusive of folks from around the world.
If you're already starting your first event with a couple hundred people, I think that speaks to the fact that you already had out the gate a smash hit on your hands of sorts, and also speaks to how presciently needed and the event was, and how there was clearly a strong audience ripping and ready for it, in its first incarnation. So when people attend a Game Days of Color event, what can they expect? What kind of activities are we talking about? We're talking talking interactive business. What are we talking?
Yeah. So usually what we do is we have a series of talks by just really smart, amazing, creative people, whether they be indie game developers or like people who are working in marketing, who work for marketing games specifically, people who are like publishers. We have a variety of people who are just speaking about topics related to game development. That's really important actually, because a lot of times people of color are the folks who are just talking about what it's like to be a person of color in games. And we're like, no, we already know that we're here. We know what it's like. Let's actually let them speak about their expertise. And ideally we can, uplift those people and like give them a platform to then be able to go on to speak at other places. And then in addition to that, we also are showing off folks' games. So when we were in person, the deal was that we would give you a table space for free, which is like a thing that people don't generally do within the gaming industry, especially at large scale events where you have multiple hundreds of people. Yeah. It's like at least $500. Yeah. I think GDC is like several $1,000s to be able to show your game at a table. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I was just like, we need to fix this. And, like there's lots of great games out there that just people can't afford to actually market their games in this kind of way, Yeah. So yeah, we really wanted to make sure that like it was accessible for folks to be able to actually, also get to the event. So we do either pay people for their travel. We do pay speakers as well. And then if you can't make it in person, we are willing to call you in. We are also willing to support folks by having people run your table. So that's for the in-person version. For online, we have talks in the same way. We also we're working on more of like, we had an expo last year that was like kind of just like a list of games that you could go and play. We also started to partner with Steam, which was really great. So we had a Steam curator page, which is still running, and I'm really excited about doing that again this year. And we're really starting to think more deeply as well about another set of folks that I feel like we could do a great job at supporting, which is in addition to the indie devs that we are, really trying to champion, like what about the folks that want to work for studios? How do we make sure that we can create those connections? So something that we're thinking really deeply about right now is actually figuring out the right way to form, like, maybe it's mentorship, maybe it's not mentorship, maybe it's networking with, other creators, maybe it's networking with people who are hiring at companies. We're really figuring out like what that format looks like right now, and we're very excited about having a networking day at this year's event.
Perhaps it's some sort of new hybrid of Mentwork wing.
I like it.
I think someone needs to give me $10,000 for that.
Mentworking. I like it. Mentworking.
Oh no.
I'm into it.
We'll send it back to the brainstorm room. Okay. So we got your own personal projects. You're making a platform with a group featuring other people's games, and on top of this, you also work in tech and design, working in user experience. Tell us. I think this would be really valuable for many to know. Basically, how do you collage together a life in this field, working in these different production contexts? Yeah, how do you do that? Can you tell us about your life in these different tiers and how you balance all these different tiers of participation?
Yeah, it is definitely an interesting balance. I would say that the way that I try to think about it is I think that I really enjoy my relationship with design and technology because I feel like it's something that I can do for 8 hours a day and I can treat it like work. And I think that's been great. I think that games I learned when I was younger, like doing all these games with folks, that I really wanted to have a sense of creative freedom. And I understood that that wasn't really going to be very easy to do if I were to go, the route of joining a studio. I'm going to be collaborating with other folks to create a vision, and it's a shared vision, but I'm not really interested in doing that at like a 50-person company or something like that. So it really made a lot of sense to me because I was having folks were offering, for me to join their studios and stuff like that. And I was like, I don't know if that's the route that I think I want to go. So I did make a very active choice that I wanted to keep games as something that I would do to have fun. And if I earn money from it, that's really nice. Like sometimes people do send me, pay as you want PayPal funds for Sweetheart. And I really appreciate that. And I think it's encouraging for me to keep working on games in general. But really, I'm doing this for fun and I want to keep it as fun. So it's something that I do sometimes put down. So for example, I've really been slowly chipping away at my next project and really thinking very deeply about what are the systems that I want to create in this next game and doing a lot of research and reading. So yeah, I would say that I really do focus on my job, it feeds me, it keeps me generally engaged, and it helps me think a lot very deeply about, I just learned so much from being a product designer, being a UX designer. And a lot of that does translate into the work that I do within games. So I really do find that there are a lot of similarities between thinking about the ways that people move through a digital product and the ways that people might move through a game. So I feel like I get really inspired by the work that I do during the day. And I also luckily earn money from it. And it's something that I don't feel, angry about if I don't get to do the thing that I want to with it. Sometimes you don't get to make the decisions that you want to make within a job, right? But I can do that for design and be totally chill with it. I think if I had to do that for games, I'd be like, how dare you? I want to put this story in and you're telling me I can't. I would just be so pissed. So I really find that that's great. And then when it comes to the Game Does with Color Expo, I'm really thankful that I have a team of folks that I work with on it. So it's not just me. It's Sean Alexander Allen. It's Chris Algu. It's Brian Chung. It's Brian Carr. It's DJ Lee. We're all working very heavily together on making this event happen. And we have other contributors who are helping. So we really have gotten better at delineating the roles between all of us and making sure that we are as focused as possible. We start as early as we can and work backwards from the September event and make sure that we're really thinking deeply about what do we need to get done. And I think that's really helpful because it helps me to know what I need to do. And I know that if I do what I need to do and everybody else is focused on what they need to do, we're all going to meet together and end up with an awesome event.
So at least part of the balance here is that when you're building your own organizations and working with a group, you want to make sure that there's good governance, there's sort of clear roles and even delegation of things. And then for these other jobs that are about the sort of the consistent income that supports the life, we said it's nice when some money and support comes through the individual projects, but we all know that's never going to be the sort of thing that is consistent, right? Never is too strong a word. I was just trying to illustrate.
I agree with you. I don't know if it ever will be consistent. Yeah, I'm just it's nice. Yeah.
You want to make sure that the bills are paid. So when it comes to finding those jobs, balance is in part found by making sure that job gives you, even though at the surface doesn't look like necessarily your individual projects, there's something about the practices of those jobs that are actually giving you something that you can take with you out the door to make those personal projects.
Yeah, and also I really am thankful that I have the kind of job where it's not soul sucking. It's really invigorating a lot of the time. And so, I log on at 10-ish. I log off at like 6-ish, 6:15, like a very reasonable, work day. And so I have a lot of time in the afternoons and evenings, especially like right now where like I live by myself. I don't, I'm not really seeing a ton of my friends all the time, although I do tune into like their Twitch streams and stuff like that. And so like we're keeping in touch and everything, but I do find that I have some open time, and I am actively choosing in those times to, do something that feels interesting to me. And sometimes that's working on game stuff. Sometimes that's like thinking about like, I want to redesign the Game Devs of Color website, like random stuff like that, and just really treating it as a fun, curious experiment and seeing where it lands. So yeah, I think also having boundaries, like really strict boundaries between like my day job time and like all the other stuff that I want to do is also really important.
Yeah, without that, everything would just start to fall apart quickly, I'm sure. So boundaries are key. I have a question, which I hope is not too psychological in nature, but we're working in these three tiers that we've outlined, and there's probably other like sub tiers as well, and they're all intermingling. What I want to know, like, sort of the conceptual drives of all require ideas to be, ideated and then, resolved somehow through a creative tool, whether that's speaking or a game making tool or other kinds of software or whatever. Like, there's still a conceptual drive that for each. And I want to know, do you feel like that for working in all of these contexts, does the conceptual drive kind of stay in the same place, or are there completely different starting points for the different zones of work?
So just to make sure I understand, and I'll like repeat it back to you. Yeah, I'm like, this is deep. Like, is it the same? What I'm interpreting this as is this, are you using the same energy almost between these different types of like work, quote unquote, that you're doing? Is that kind of like what you're saying?
Yeah, and maybe I have a theory that every idea that you want to advance is an expression of your own desires and something you want to see in the world. And do you feel like that they're all coming from that same place, or do you have to sort of invent a different starting place for sort of like what kind of new idea that's going to be launched, whether it's like a larger tech company, or there's something there's no constraint, it's exactly what you want to do, or if it's something you're working with a small group. Do you feel like, you start from the same place conceptually, or did those different contexts create different goals entirely?
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to think about like, how the projects that I do personally and the projects that I do at work, like how do they differ in terms of the way I think about them and the way that I like work on them? And it's really interesting because like my gut reaction is like very often I feel like I do start from the same place, which is like, why am I doing it?
Yeah.
I really think a lot about like, what am I trying to say? Why am I trying to say it? Am I the right person to be saying it? Which is something I'm thinking very deeply about right now related to the game that I'm thinking about next, which is, I'm going to be writing more characters who are not like me. And like, I'm going to have to figure out the right ways to make sure that I'm being really respectful, which is why part of what I'm doing is like consuming a lot of media, but also I think I'm going to need to have a lot of conversations. But that's like very much like what I do at my job when I'm working on a project. So I do a lot of research at my job too, and I'm talking to tons of people to make sure that I really do understand and like get into their headspace. So I do feel like a lot of it does come from the same place. Like I think that sometimes at work, because of the scale and the speed at which we go, I don't get to use some of the tools within the toolkit as often as I would like to. And so that's why it's been really interesting, for example, with Game Devs of Color, working on more like understanding the folks who are within our community and really like trying to build like personas, quote unquote, in terms of like, who are these different folks? We can't really categorize them 100%, but we can at least start to understand like the themes and like the different types of wants and needs that folks have and like how those kind of match up with other people. And I feel like that's something that I've done in design as well. It's something that I think about with games as well in terms of character building. So they are a lot of the times coming from the same place and I'm using the same process. But yeah, I think it is like in some ways using, like sometimes I want to use like the skills that I don't get to use in my day job, like all the time. I want to do that with like gaming projects. I want to do that with the events that we run. And I've really felt very reinvigorated by a lot of the work that I've been doing externally as well as at work.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate you entertaining, getting into perhaps more, deeper and abstract headspace, as sometimes we do with VGA, because we are always trying to find that Venn diagram between video games, video game culture, and contemporary art. And so this is maybe switching topics quite a lot, but I like to ask this question when we're before we run out of time, because time is nearly about to run out. Because that is what our organization does. We try to use the tools of art history, art criticism, and gallery exhibition to put new kinds of context around games. Can I ask, how do you situate your work with the term contemporary art, or do you at all?
Ooh, gosh. I feel like that term is so broad that it's like, what is not contemporary art? But I guess that's the point, right?
That's what I'd like. Yeah.
I feel like that's the point. So kind of, I like the idea of some games being art. I feel like it's, it gets into the realm of like, are games art? And the answer is probably some, not all, maybe, I don't know. But I feel like some is probably the right answer depending on what your definition of art is. And I hope that people would consider some of the games that I've done to be within that category. I have had Breakup Squad featured within a museum before, which was really, really cool. And
this is why I wanted to ask the question.
Yeah. I was like, wow, we've gotten to this point, where like we're able to start analyzing games a bit more and think about like, the stories that they're trying to tell, which I feel like a lot of great art does, right? So if the goal really is to, tell a story with the piece of work that you're creating, then yes, I feel like that term works. I'm definitely going to be curious longer term in the future to see what they use as like the terms for the art that we have right now, because I feel like we just have such a plethora of options. Like there's just so much art out now. I can't wait to see how people categorize it in like 50 years or something. Yeah.
Perhaps we're overdue for a recategorization right now with the sort of surplus of creative work that we have.
Yes.
Swimming through different media economies. Speaking of that, and I think this is another sort of broad question that I like to think about when it comes to games. And sorry, I'm doing some real thinking. Here's a real think gesture for you. Video games are always showing up in new contexts that they weren't necessarily associated with in the past. Do you have any ideas for an environment that you'd like to see your work in? You think it'd be fun if your work was presented in that environment, that it's not normally associated with video games?
It's interesting. The one that came to my gut first was the subway. So I guess that's what I want now.
Yeah.
First
thought, best thought.
Right? I don't know. It would be really interesting to, think about, like, there have been people who have done like installation art and stuff like that within the subway. I think it's at 42nd Street or 34th Street in New York. There's like this wind tunnel area where you can like, if you like wave your hand by it, it like plays some noise, and that's really fun. But like, what if we actually had more interactive types of content within, for example, the subway? I think, I have to think more on goals when it comes to like other spaces, because I think I've been so concentrated at this point on like just like being kind of inspired by like my grandparents' stories, and like thinking a lot about that kind of work that I haven't deeply considered, like where would I want it to exist? That is like strange, but I really feel like it would be cool to have like more games within the subway. And like thinking beyond that, I'm not going to say a Tesla because that's gross. But I'm sure there are like, really random spaces where we could inject games, or like think about them, even differently, like maybe not video games or like video installations, but like something, really random that encourages humans to connect with each other. And so maybe what I would do is ask, like folks who are thinking about this, and myself included now, is like, where are there opportunities for people to connect in ways that feel really human and not forced, that we could, you know, use games and like the concept of play to encourage those kinds of connections.
I think public transit's a great place to start. There's plenty of precedent for public art, even public art commissions in transit spaces like the subway and others. Why not video games?
Why not?
Or if you already have an example out there of a commissioned public transit video game, please let us know. That would be a history we want to start compiling right away. We are very nearly out of time, Kat. Can you believe it?
I'm sad.
I just feel like we've just started to scratch the surface and get to some large, more difficult but important questions. I want to know, do I have time for one more, or do we need to move to wrap up? Here I got one. Okay, Bryce is telling me one more question. So, still thinking broadly about games and how their role in culture is sort of fluid and shifting right now. VGA as an organization, you know, hubs out of Chicago. Now that we're doing pretty much all of our business online, that is sort of expanding more. But I think the association with Chicago and a specific region really informs a lot, maybe even everything we do. And I'm always curious to ask this of other people in other spaces working in games. How much do you think locality influences your work in video games?
Mine specifically, or like people in general?
You can answer either way.
Ooh, interesting. I think for me personally, a lot. Like I have a lot of opinions about New York, and I think that they definitely come up in my games in a variety of ways. Like Sweetheart, I feel like is super obvious in terms of like the spaces that I existed in, and I really wanted to reflect those in games. And that's a really interesting question, thinking about like creators in general, and like I'm definitely like interested to think more about where, like, are people who are making like open world games, are those folks like in open world spaces, or are they wishing for being in open world spaces, you know?
Sort of longing for more space.
Interesting. Yeah, like a lot of the games I've made have definitely like been reflections of the places that I've lived in, which is basically all just New York. It's like Brooklyn and the Bronx. I'm like very much talking about those. My first game that I actually made by myself was a game where I was like you basically like jump and kick a bunch of people out of the way so you can get to the train in time. So I feel like personally, assuming that's what you meant by locales, I also feel like I should confirm. Cool. Yes. That is my jam 100%. Just like the next game I work on is going to have a city, I think, that is called like New York or something. So I'm not going to stop talking about New York anytime soon.
There goes. That helps my ongoing theory that there is no monolithic globalized video game culture. It has everything to do with our specific lives and how they get imprinted into these projects.
I love that.
With that, I want to thank you so much, Kat, for spending your time with us here on VGA Fireside. We're not quite done though, because this is an internet-based talk show. There are rules. And one of those rules is we must plug things at the end. So I don't make the rules. But I don't want to get caught, violating the rules. So we need to plug. Kat, what would you like to plug out there? Where can people find you on the internet?
Yes, I am definitely most active on Twitter. So at Catt Small, 2 T's, 2 L's, just like in the name that you see here. CattSmall.com, GameDoesOfColorExpo.com. Yup. You can see that down there in the, I guess, do they call that Jubilee Do? I don't know. But anyway, those are the main places you can definitely find me. I'm also on LinkedIn.
The coolest place to
the coolest place. And I have a newsletter on my site that is pretty fun too. So if you like to get personal updates about like game development and design and all the other random stuff I do, then you can also subscribe to that.
Terrific. I should mention that this is a program of VGA Gallery, a not-for-profit arts organization hubbed out of Chicago that supports artists who make games. If you'd like to support this program and other things we do, please check out vgagallery.org and consider buying a print. We have fine art prints made from video game artists. And if you want to sidestep the printing and just donate directly, you can do that too. Consider donating so that we can keep on making this show and other online deliverables to you like VGA Zine, which you can sign up for and get in your inbox once a month. I've got a bunch of, I'm going to just say all the thank yous at the beginning. Gratitude is the path of the true life. So I'm going to do them again. Thank you to producer and director of operations, Bryce Pauls, for making the show run. Thank you to Director of Communications and Designer Eleanor Schichtel. Thank you to the VGA staff and the VGA board. Thank you to the Independent Game Designers Association Chicago chapter. Thank you, Ross. Thank you to the Media Arts and Game Design module students from Northwestern. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to the DePaul game development students for joining us. Thanks to Caleb for spreading the word. Thank you to Electric Mirrors for the music. Thanks to the Oldham Music Center Youth Brass Band for the fanfare. And again, if you have any feedback, or know specific groups who would be interested in a program like this, why not drop us a line at info@vgagallery.org. We would love to hear from you. And another gigantic thank you to our special guest today, Catt Small. Thank you, Catt.
Thank you. It was so great to be here. Thank you so much. And thank you for doing such a great job, Chaz. You're great.
Oh, my goodness. You're making me blush. Thank you so much. So after all those thank yous, one more thank you to you, the viewer, for joining us. And from all of us at VGA Fireside, stay warm.